So now I'm on that blue paper. I'm going to continue the idea of how to solve percent problems and different strategies we can use. And your paper actually has a little bit more than my notes right now. Your paper has 2 arrows, and then a line, and then 100. So that's what your paper has. Now I want you to fill in the word part lined up with that first arrow, and total lined up with that second arrow. Another thing you could think of is the whole as well as the total. So those 2 words are synonyms. They mean the same thing. And then this guy over here is going to be your percent. And the 100 is always going to be in the denominator. So one way you can solve percent problems is to do a percent proportion. Just like chapter 1, we're going to have 2 fractions. One represents the part and the total. The other side represents the percent, something over 100. So let's do example 1 using the percent proportion strategy. 15 is 30% of what number? This is not the same as finding 30% of 15. That was finding the percent of a number. This is 30% of what number? We have to find the total. And this 15 is the part. And the 30% is still the percentage. So once we realize that this is not a finding of the percent of a number, we're trying to find that number that they found a percent of. It's kind of tricky wording. So when we are using the percent proportion, we're going to take our percent and put it into fraction form. That's on the right side. On the left side, we're going to have our part and our total. Our part is what we know, and our total is what we're trying to find. Now, we have to look, how would we go from 30 to 15? Notice my arrow's going the other direction, and my number's getting smaller. I'm going to have to divide by 2, and I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I get 50 as the number that I need to answer the question. So if I read it, 15 is 30% of 50. In the lesson before, we were finding what's 30% of 50, and we were getting 15. So it's a different way of answering the question. The total or the whole is missing. Now let's use the skeleton as another way of thinking about this. You have this. I'd like you to write at least a T and a P on the bottom. That you need to add in. So this is the skeleton. And I like using the skeleton because the same pieces are there. You have the of, you have the 30%, and you have the is. It's just backwards. So the is over here in the skeleton, and it comes first. So we have to read this as the part 15 is equal to something times the percent. See how I went backwards there? The total is the missing piece. That's what we have to find, and we're given the part. In the previous lesson, like I said, we were given the percent, we were given the total, and we just had to multiply. Now, we're given the percent, we're given the part, and now we got to find this missing piece. So, this is still a decimal, times something has to be 15. So, in any other world, if this was not a decimal, what times 3 is 15? 5. But because it is a decimal, we're going to have to divide by a decimal. We know how to do that though. We move the decimal point over, we move the decimal point over, and 150 divided by 3, lo and behold, is the Same thing we got with our other strategy. So we're either going to be dividing by 2 or we're going to be dividing by 0.3. Those are 2 different ways to solve the same problem. Let's try another one. Same idea, we are asked to find the total. So 225, that's the part, is what a 75% of what number? 225 is 75% of what? So I'm going to set up 2 equivalent fractions. The 75% is 75 over 100, and the part is 225. The numbers are a little bit ickier. That's okay though. We can see if there's a connection between the two by thinking, can 75 be multiplied by anything and get 225? Well, I don't know my 75's facts. If I double it, I'm going to get 150. That's kind of close. Let's see what 75 times 3 is. Oh my goodness, I get it exactly. So I know that I could multiply by 3 and get 300. That's the percent proportion strategy. Now let's try the same thing with our skeleton. $225 is the part. We're asked to find the total. So when we fill this in, we have 75% and we have 225 over here. So when we change it to a decimal, it's 0.75 times something is going to equal 225. We know that's just dividing. This is the dividend, and then the 75 hundredths is the divisor. We're going to move it over and move it over. So really, we are dividing 222,500 by 75. Well, we know because of that one that 3 times 75 is 225. And then we just have to hold the 2 zeros, and it's the same 300 that we got over there. So you can use either strategy, skeleton, or percent proportion. Example 4, country music makes up 75% of Landon's music library. If he has downloaded 90 country music songs, how many songs does he have in his music library? So we know it's a percent problem. We see the percentage. We have to figure out, is 90 the part or is 90 the total? So he has downloaded 90 country music songs, and we want to know how many songs does he have in his entire library. So the country music is only one part of the music that he has in his library. So that gets the P, and the total is what we're being asked to find. I'm going to use the skeleton to do this one. So I have my percent, 75, of the total, that's what I'm being asked to find, is that 90. So percent to a decimal, we have 75 hundredths times something is 90. I know now I have to divide to find this. The 90 is the dividend. The 75 hundredths is the divisor. I'm going to move it over 2, move it over 2. So that means I'm going to have 75 as my divisor, and my decimal point is right over on the side. So I know that it could go into once, and I'm going to subtract and get 15. I'm going to bring down the 0, and then 75 times something gets me close to 150. 75 times 2 is exactly 150, and then I can annex my 0. I have 120 total songs in Landon's library. So I'm going to just write that as my answer. Example 5, I'm going to do the percent proportion way. First, we have to figure out where my part and my total and my percent is. The percent's easy to see. Allie calculates that she spends 20% of the school day in math class. If she spends 60 minutes in math class, how many minutes does she spend in school? So that question at the end is the total. She wants to know how long is she there for the entire day. Part of it is spent in math class. So is 60 minutes. 60 is the part. We're asked to find the total, and the percentage is 20 over 100. I know that 2 times 3 is 6, so 20 times 3 is 60, and I'm going to multiply by 3 to get a total of 300 minutes. And that's example 5. The last 2 involve this recipe. And what this is 1 cup of Chex Mix is made up of different things. Chex Mix, nuts, chocolate chips, and a little bit of that sauce that ties it all together. So we have to use these percentages as we can. So if you have 5 cups of Chex Mix, how many total cups can you make? So this is very clear. We're finding the total, and we have a part. The percentage is what we need to find from the table. We're dealing with the Chex Mix. I'm going to use the skeleton. So I have the 60% of something equals 5. So that is 0.6 times something is 5. And I'm going to divide by that decimal. I'm going to move it over. And I'm getting 6 times 8 is 48. And I have a 2. I'm going to annex a 0. That would be 3. I'm going to get an 18. I would annex a 0 again. I would get another 3. I would get an 18 and another 2. Do you see the pattern? That means this 3 is going to repeat all over again, forever and ever. That is the fraction 1/3. So that is how many cups of Chex Mix we would make in entire total. Got 1 more to go. Example 7 is asked how many cups of chocolate chips are used if there are 10 cups of Chex Mix. So the 10 is actually the total, and we just want to know how much of that is made up of chocolate chips. And now we have our chocolate chip percentage to use. I'm also going to do the skeleton, a percent of a number. So I'm going to be just multiplying 0.15 times 10. I know when I do that, the decimal point just moves over 1 spot, and I have 1.5 cups of chocolate chips. Hopefully that gives you a good practice of doing lots of different percent problems, and we will do more in class. Bye.